I'm really pleased to have as a guest tonight Ian Hu from Canada. Ian, welcome to the show.
Hi, happy to be here. Thanks, Dave.
Excellent. So we're going to go down and do our 2-minute warning. We're about 2 minutes before showtime. So if you could, in the comments, let us know where you're from, what you're excited to hear about today. Today we're going to be talking about how to avoid the stress of technology overload, which I understand is a little weird doing this on a social media telecast, but bear with us. Would love to hear from your comments. So let us know in the comments where you're from. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome to the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Book Club. My name is Dave Scriven-Young, a lawyer focusing on litigation, environmental law, and construction law from Chicago, Illinois. We're helping to create the next generation of lawyers with high emotional intelligence through a weekly book club and daily practical posts at facebook.com/lawyersEQ. During our book club discussions, we'll do a deep dive into books that will help us develop our emotional intelligence skills, specifically think about how we can begin to use these skills in our law practices. I don't sit here as an expert. On the contrary, I actually want to learn from all of you and learn from our special guests today. So please, would love to see your observations and your comments in the comments below, wherever we should be on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and really excited for this discussion. So let's get into the content for those of you who don't know a little bit about me. I graduated in 2003 from DePaul. I'm senior counsel at Picard and Abramson. I'm a civil litigator. I also do construction law and environmental law. And my mission is to identify and share historically correct knowledge and resources, and hopefully in an inspiring, entertaining format in order to help others meet and exceed goals and standards in every area of their lives. So I just want to say hello to everyone who's joined online. I see that Rachel is on my little watch party here. I also see Stuart and Sandy. Hello to all. On the comments, I see Charlie and Kathy and a winter cactus on Twitch. So welcome to all. I know there's probably more of you out there watching. So let us know in the comments where you're from and if you're what you're excited about today. So let's talk about what we talked about in the past. So emotional intelligence skill that we're dealing with is self-management. And the book that we're using as our textbook is The Stress Solution by Dr. Rangan Chatterjee. And basically, he talks about 4 areas of our lives that can either stress us out or de-stress us. So the first area is what our purpose is in our life. And we can align our actions more with our purpose by doing several different things. We can do affirmations, we can reframe things, we can feel gratitude and think of things that we're grateful for. We can schedule our time and have morning routines, and we can live more. And that's things like loving what you do, acting with intention, having a vision for your life, and engaging through serving others. We also talked about relationships, and we can de-stress through the sense of touch and by nurturing our friendships and our other relationships. And then we talked about body. And we talked about how what you eat can actually make you happy and de-stress you. On the contrary, also on the other opposite side, there are things that you can eat that actually will stress you out, right? And then last week we talked about resetting your rhythm, especially through sleep. And we had a very special guest who talked to us about what we should do, how we should sleep, how long we should sleep. So if you missed that episode, make sure you catch it. And just so you know, all of the episodes are on Facebook, facebook.com/LawyersEQ. That's where our homepage is for the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Book Club. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to be continuing on with Dr. Chatterjee's book, The Stress Solution, but we're going to be talking about the mind and how the mind and the things that go into our mind can either be stressful, can stress us out, or it can help with our stress, can de-stress us. And our special guest today is Ian and Ian is an estates and insurance litigator at Carroll Hayde Chown LLP. He's a legal innovation evangelist and lover of equity, diversity, and inclusion. Among his leadership roles, he is most proud of being the first racially diverse chair of the Seoul Small Firm and General Practice section at the Ontario Bar Association. Yes, we do have a Canadian in the house. He has served as vice president of the Federation of Asian Canadian Lawyers, mentored young lawyers, and advocated for diverse lawyers and students. He was co-chair of the American Bar Association's Law Practice Today Board, a leadership member of the ABA's Law Practice Division, and a member of the Tech Show 2020 Board. He was an executive member of the Advocate Society, Personal Injury, and Insurance Practice Group. And finally, he founded and also invites lawyers to join the Facebook group Canadian Lawyers Personal Finance, which helps lawyers on their way to financial independence. So, Ian, let's bring Ian into the discussion. Ian, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Dave?
Doing great. Thanks for joining me. And everyone's really excited for this topic. So, Ian, before we get into the material, I'm curious. One of the great things that I find in doing podcasts and this video cast is I talk to people from around the country in the United States, and then also obviously from outside the U.S. So I'm curious as to how COVID life is in Canada. What's going on with the quarantine, and how are you dealing with it with your law practice?
Well, I live in a small town of about 150,000 just north of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And so I think because it's a little more rural, we don't see any super bad effects in terms of, walking around and the hospitals being inundated. We haven't seen any of that here. But what we definitely have is people staying home a lot. The practice has gone down tons, I try and keep 1 or 2 new files every month. For me, if I can get 1 or 2 new files every month, the practice is going well. I've probably seen 1 or less for the last 3 months. So
wow.
It's definitely been tough. It's been a slowdown, big time. At the same time, I think for dual income earners with kids, it's a super hard time. Both my wife and I work, and for us to work and handle little kids at the same time is basically impossible. So the slowdown in work hasn't been that bad because someone has to look after the kids too.
That's right. Yeah. And how old are your kids?
They're 5 and 8 now. Yeah.
Okay, so do you have like we in the States we have e-learning for people who
Oh
are
yeah.
quarantining. Are you doing any of that, or did your kids do that before
Yeah,
school
it's
ended?
funny because we are doing the e-learning, and it's funny we're talking about technology today because it's part of our family, plan not to have them be so into technology, and we only allow them to use to touch a screen once a week on Saturdays for an hour or two. And so for us, all of a sudden, that's had to change where they're using the computer, essentially almost every day, every other day for an hour or whatever. So, it's okay, but it's just not the greatest. Anyone knows. I mean, we're all in this. It's not a great to learn.
No, no, not at all. And it's my two kids have done e-learning. And actually, my older son did a summer school class because he couldn't fit music theory into his normal schedule. And so, yeah, it's been all screens pretty much all the time. And I think you're right. This is a very timely topic for these days, for sure.
Yeah.
So why don't we go right into sort of the material for today and just give sort of just an introduction into sort of the mind category. Because again, what we put into our mind is can either stress us out or it can de-stress us, right? And what Dr. Chatterjee talks about is, we need to give our mental health the same daily care that we give our physical health. We think and we talk all the time about, exercising and our diet and that sort of thing, but we don't tend to really think about what's being put into our mind and what we put into our mind. And so the next 3 episodes of this video cast is going to be discussing ways to avoid stressing our minds out. And tonight, obviously, we're going to be talking about technology. Next week, we have a special guest coming in to talk about how to spend more time in nature and how nature can de-stress us. And then, of course, the big topic that I think everyone thinks about with respect to the mind is a regular breathing practice. So something like meditation and the like. And so, Ian, living where you do, I bet you have some natural wonders and natural beauty that you see on a regular basis.
Yeah, I definitely like to get out basically every day. Whether it's going for a walk or mountain biking. In the winter, it'll be snowboarding out here. A lot of old lawyers like to play golf, and I get it. It's just nice to be out there in the green. So that for me, that's super important, and why I don't work in the city. Why I don't live in the city.
Yeah. Yeah, and I live in the suburbs of Chicago. I know you're fond of the Windy City, and I know you get out here for the tech show on occasion. But yeah, living in the suburbs is great, and we don't have to deal with what's going on in the city as much. But it'll be interesting to see living out as far as I do from the city what transportation is going to be like once the offices truly open back up with quarantine. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, people are going to be masks in the transit system, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
At the point, I wouldn't want to be in the transit system. So.
Yeah, exactly right. All right, so let's talk about technology. So I know the irony of talking about technology overload on a video cast where we're spread out to social media, but let's talk about what our phones do to us, and as lawyers. How our phones have can really stress us out, or it can be used as something that is helpful. So Dr. Chatterjee says that our phones are less of a voice-to-voice communication device and more of a beautifully engineered jack-in-the-box crammed with harmful micro-stress doses. So he talks about all of the things that we get through our phones, things like notifications, likes on our posts, shares on our posts. There are videos galore on YouTube, and now on Facebook. There are so many videos, and then things like for our Twitch watchers, watching video games on Twitch and the like. actually playing games on our cell phones. We get Facebook messages and text messages and emails. There's so much going on that can just inundate us with technology. And do you see that sort of, in your practice and what you do, Ian, that you get a lot of messages coming in on your phone?
Yeah, it's terrible. The way I think about it is if you're getting content for free, you got to wonder why. And the reason why Facebook is free and Google is free and Instagram and so on is because they're using us so that they can make money. And that this is how they use us. They keep us interested with notifications. They make us feel better about ourselves and look at what other people do and want us to keep up with the Joneses. And so, we're going to click like here and like there. We're going to share this and share that to try and gain popularity on their platform. All of these to me are not good for your mental health, or they can be harmful, I guess is what I would say, because they're built to be addictive. And I think he says that in the book even, but that the characteristic of something being addictive is that it's kind of random, and it gets you interested. So it gives you a hit, some kind of pleasurable hit, and that's what notifications are. They're random. You don't know when they're going to come, and then there's a little bit of pleasure in it. Oh, someone is sending me something. Some little video is going to be interesting. Something's gonna tickle me a little bit, and that's enough. And that's the recipe for addiction. That is how gambling works. You pull on that lever on the slot machine, and it's random, and it tickles you with something, and every now and then you'll get a hit, right? So that's exactly what this is. It's designed to be addictive.
Well, and let's talk also about, technology in the practice of law, because, older, more experienced, more seasoned, lawyers, will remember, more than I will, in terms of, what typewriters were like, and, super copying and all that stuff. And if you are a more seasoned lawyer, would love to hear about that in the comments. But yeah, technology has definitely changed, and in some ways, I think it's made our practices more efficient. But in some ways, it has certainly, stressed us out more, because, whereas, before the invention of the cell phone, yes, I'm sure, partners could call associates at home, and I'm sure they did. But, there was no email, nothing like that. So if you wanted to get in touch with your associate and you were a partner, working at the office or working at home, there wasn't an easy way to reach out without, physically talking to the person and interrupting whatever, they were doing at home.
Yeah, if you're a litigator like me, you get letters, right? And you would get those letters in the morning and deal with them whenever you want, however you want. And now you get an email and you feel like you have to hit reply as soon as possible. And you actually have to think to yourself, I'm going to let this wait and reply tomorrow, because that sense of urgency is there now. And I don't know if it was there to that extent before.
Oh, I'm sure not. And all of these things, by the way, notifications and likes and everything, it can serve as a distraction, for what we're doing. It's very easy. I even catch myself, working on a brief or reviewing a document, and then an email comes in, or I get a text message, and I'm like, oh, well, maybe I should just go over here and look at this. And then I go do something else, and then something else catches my eye, and then I turn back and I'm like, what was I doing? So in many ways, it could be, even though this technology was designed to be efficient or to help us with our practices, it can distract us and actually lead to some less efficiency.
Yeah, I read that the goal is when you're working is to get into a flow, right? You want to be able to do something and be 20 minutes in, and 40 minutes in, and by the time you're done, you're like, oh, I can't believe I missed lunch, because you've been so deep inside it. But if you're 20 minutes into your factum and you're totally in the flow and you get a notification, it's going to take you another 20 minutes to get back into that flow. So you're going to lose those moments of deep concentration. They will be interrupted.
Absolutely. All right, so let's go on to our next slide. So right now, Dr. Chatterjee is talking in this material about social media, and specifically as to whether our quote unquote friends list is too big, because as he said, we've evolved to live in tribes of up to 150 people. So actually, what he says is that our social networks are too big to cope with. And I know, my son, would say, "Okay, boomer, what are you talking about?" But it's fascinating, and I think sort of the next point, we can discuss, Ian, which is, whereas before, sort of a tribe would have these, face-to-face interactions, and being disrespectful would actually, cause a real problem because you'd be saying something to their face. On social media, anybody can be, a keyboard warrior and anonymously, make, rude comments and that sort of thing. And that's much different than, that's something that has been brought because of technology, especially social media.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think you if you're in social media, you have to train yourself to ignore, and that takes some discipline. It's funny that 150 people. A few years ago, I cut down my Facebook from about 400 people to about 150. So
wow,
yeah.
Well, that's fascinating. So tell us a little bit about that process, how you made that decision, and what your journey looked like around that.
So I've had people on my Facebook, lawyers, people I've met doing fun things, all kinds of stuff. And it got to the point where I started seeing people, for example, a lawyer who's magnificently successful, right? And I'm seeing all his posts, and I'm just like, you know what? This is doing nothing for me. I don't know this person very well. I don't feel good when I see this, or him living his life in Barbados or whatever. Forget it. I don't need that. So I just cut that person out. I see someone else that's living a life that doesn't make me happy, that doesn't add anything to me, that's not actually a friend. Kick him out. And so that I just went through this process where anyone that it's kind of like the that bring me joy test, right? Anyone that didn't add to my life, I felt I took them out.
Wow, I mean that's incredible, because I think that people, I think it takes a lot of courage to do that, actually. For some of the reasons that we'll talk about later, because that sort of fear of missing out, being connected to other people. We think, well, we're connected to all these people, and that's so good, and we're able to keep in touch. But you're right. I think on the other hand, thinking about who, being intentional about who you're connected to and about what you're feeding your mind with, that would make, I think, a big difference in my life for sure.
The chances that I would call on these people to help are extremely low. And if I needed to call them, the chances wouldn't be higher because they were my Facebook friend, So it's nothing. In reality, it's just nothing, So there's another thing I'll say about my personality. Malcolm Gladwell says if there was one thing he could be, it would be more disagreeable. And by that, he means someone that doesn't care about what other people think. So you got to keep in mind, though, Malcolm Gladwell, I think, is very successful because he does care about what people think. But regardless, I think fundamentally I have a disagreeable character. So for me to remove certain friends, I'm okay with that. I'm not thinking about how they think about me, for example.
Wow. Well, let me bring in one of our commenters. Kathy says, I found the tribe of about 150 to be very accurate, and how it's impossible to keep up with all of our friends on social media. Well, I think that's right. I think that it is impossible once you get I mean, even 150, I think is pretty hard to keep up with everybody. And so I completely agree with that. And going back to what you were saying, Ian, in terms of, the haters, and I think that you're right. I think that you can, in some respects, train yourself to, not pay attention to the haters, not to pay attention, not try to let it affect you. But I think everyone is different in that regard. I think that, some people are affected by, negative comments, affected by, fear of missing out, affected by, seeing other people have, I don't know, you might think of as having a better life than you are. They may be more affected about that than other people may be. So it's a fascinating thing that you did, and as I said, I think it took a lot of courage to do that, because there are so many fears around social and what you might be missing. So I think that's great.
Yeah, I do want to clarify. Disagreeability is essentially a personality trait that you can test for. So you can go to a psychologist, give you a personality test, and they'll put you on where you are on that spectrum.
Really?
Yeah, and that's how you know I am the kind of person that actually doesn't care, that really, really doesn't care what you think about me, versus I am the kind of person that does, right? So
Wow.
It's testable. It's up there with the other major personality traits like extroversion, introversion, all that stuff.
So let me dive a little bit deeper in on that. So, because one of the things that, an emotional intelligence skill is knowing yourself, right? Knowing, self-assessment, and that helps you to, when you figure out yourself, then you can figure out, how you're going to react to other people. You're going to figure out how to manage a relationship with another person. So curious as to, how you came to the conclusion that, you wanted to find this out about yourself, and what that process looked like.
Well, so I didn't take the test, but I came to it by reading, things like, and listening to people like Gladwell talk about it, and thinking about my own interactions, and like you say, my ability to just delete a whole bunch of people off my Facebook. Some who weren't happy. I did get a few people that I know in real life say, "Why did you delete me off your Facebook?" But and of course the litmus test, my wife, and when you have someone close to you that's different than you, and I see that she's an agreeable person and I'm a disagreeable person, that's how I know where I am on the spectrum. And I had a job in my previous job where I did it was my job to be the public face of a company and to network and so on. And being a disagreeable person, I knew that I had to turn it up a notch, because my instinct would be like, I don't care, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you know yourself, you're able to say, this is a weakness of mine, and in this context, I want to do this,
Yeah, no, that's incredible. And I've, personally talking about, learning about yourself, one of the things tests that I took started as the beginning of this emotional intelligence journey was the test inside Emotional Intelligence 2.0. And it really opened my eyes to knowing, what are the things that, I'm weakest at. And so that's how this whole, video cast started, because, I wanted to learn more about the skills that I was weaker at, and was going to read these books anyway, and wanted to, bring on interesting people like yourself to have a great discussion about it. So I definitely, recommend, especially Emotional Intelligence 2.0 test, other tests where you can just find out more about yourself. Some of these things are, very easily accessible, and it's a great thing just to learn.
Yeah.
So great. Well, let's move on here. And so let's talk about, when you get that comment that is causing you stress, because what Dr. Chatterjee says is our brains actually notice and process signals of potential threat first, and it's just more important, because our brains were designed to figure out what is threatening us, and what is giving us a good feeling. And that's why we take notice of the one snarky comment rather than the 300 likes. And then we, ruminate on that one comment and for a long time. And it actually gives our brain the signals that there's something wrong in our social world. And then, of course, chronic rumination is a predictor of things, of mental health issues, up into and including suicide. So, and I can tell you just in my own world, I obviously, do a lot of social media, a lot of podcasting and, post a lot of pictures and that sort of thing. And I remember one time in particular, I posted a picture of like a selfie of me and my dog. To me, I love my dog, cute little thing. His name is Pixel and I love him. And, so I posted this picture and he's kind of like, when he hasn't had a haircut in a while, he's kind of, he's a pretty fluffy, dog. And so that's the picture that I posted, right? And, everyone was, liking and, loving the picture and saying how cute he was. And then, one guy who, was a friend of mine, he posted some like snarky comment. And I took that more to heart than all of the, hundreds of other, likes and comments that I got. And so this is definitely, true in my life. And I know that, he didn't mean anything by it. He was just, being playful, I think. But it's true. And if that can happen to me with, a picture of my dog, I can only imagine what it's like for, kids that have, social media and they're have self-esteem issues, on their own because they're so young. And I could definitely see how that would work.
Yeah, or any lawyer that's trying it out for the first time, you get 10 likes and you get one person that writes a snarky comment and you're like, well, that wasn't worth it. But in reality, it's just one comment. Forget about it, But yeah, it's hard to not stick onto that and have that affect you.
Yeah. I actually had a great conversation today that I'll be posting on my podcast next Tuesday. But it was a gentleman from a branding and marketing company, and he actually said, for lawyers who are posting on social media, that you have to think about sort of what your end goal is. And for many lawyers, or for most lawyers actually, your goal should not be comments or likes, but it should just be the fact that you're out there and you're connecting with your social circle because you want to get those referrals and that sort of thing. So, it helped me to sort of reorient myself into thinking, well, yeah, this post didn't get a lot of likes, but, somebody saw it. And, even if they didn't have a reaction to it or if they had a bad reaction, at least, they had a reaction and they saw it and, I'm reconnecting with people. So, just sort of trying to reorient, what we're doing on social, I think might help as well.
That's great advice. We're essentially out there to show our human personalities, and that some things are going to be liked and some things aren't. But that's why we're doing it. Yeah.
So we got a comment from YouTube, and the comment says, "Why are people more affected by a snarky comment compared to kind ones?" And I think it's because, I'm not a scientist and Ian isn't either, but we're learning from what Dr. Chatterjee says in the book. And I think, again, I think it has to go back to our brain function, the way that we've evolved over time is that, if you think about, when we were, cavemen and we were, hunting and gathering, our bodies and our brains were really oriented to figuring out, what is a threat to us. And so, what Dr. Chatterjee says in the book is that, we're more affected by a threat because that's the way that our bodies and brains were set up. So that's why I think that we're more affected by, a snarky comment as opposed to a kind comment, although you would think it would be the opposite. But I think, what Ian says is completely right. We can try to train ourselves to, not worry about the haters as much and pay more attention to the people that actually have meaning to us.
I'm going to add to that. Dr. Larry Richard, who's a lawyer consultant, he's spoken at a bunch of conferences for lawyers, basically says, look, lawyers are perfectionists, right? So us especially, when we get criticized, it hurts because we don't want anything to be wrong. We want things to be perfect. And we have a critical eye ourselves. So that's a personality that doesn't fit social media very well.
Oh, exactly right. Yeah, and the perfectionist tendencies that we have to deal with is just amazing. So we got one more comment. Comment says, yes, that is one of the reasons that social media can be so bad for children and teens. As a teacher, I've been seen students get so upset by reactions / comments on social media. Teenagers' self-esteem is unfortunately so tied to social media and social media status / image. And actually, it's we made the decision in our house. Actually, my wife made the decision that I completely agreed with. That our kids haven't had social media. I mean, they go on YouTube and they have that, but they don't have Facebook accounts. They don't have Instagram accounts and that sort of thing. My older son, who's going to be a junior in high school, he's just getting into it because he wants to, well, maybe wants to be an actor when he grows up, and he got some advice from a summer camp that he just did that social media obviously might be helpful to showcase his voice, showcase his talents, and that sort of thing. But protecting kids from social media may be one way to help with this, because I know there's a lot of cyberbullying that goes on.
Yeah, it's I worry about that for my own kids. So.
Mm-hmm. All right. So let's talk about Facebook. So Dr. Chatterjee says that recent studies which examine the effect Facebook has on its adolescent users found that it makes them more depressed. And he says, why is that? It's because your view of the world changes. If you feel that everyone around you is having the best time of their life and you're not, it's going to make you feel like you're failing, and that causes stress. And I think, it sort of, ties on to what you were saying, Ian. And, I see that all the time, people, especially, younger lawyers who are traveling all the time. And you're right, more experienced lawyers who are going to, on the beach and going to places that I wish that I was. I'm a big Disney fan too. So whenever I see, pictures of people going to Disney, yeah, I mean, part of me says, wow, it's awesome just to see the pictures. On the other hand, it's, oh God, I wish I was there.
They were going to go to Disney in December.
Oh, no kidding.
For the first time. Yeah.
Wow.
I the little pens.
No kidding. Wow. Yeah, your kids are the perfect age for to go to Walt Disney World for the first time. So that'll be great.
No, but yeah, I mean, it's hard enough for lawyers, especially young lawyers, to fit in at their own firms, and not want to keep up with the Joneses. There's one firm, for example, that every single car in the parking lot was a BMW. Every single car, and for some reason, I happened to have one then at the same time. And sometimes I wonder, is that why they hired me? Did they look at the car I came in on? But and then what do? You start doing what all your fellow lawyers are doing in the firm, right? You buy the nice suits that they have, the same shoes. You go on the same vacations that they do, and all of a sudden you add Facebook on top of this. All your other, I went to a law school with 300 other lawyers in the same year. All my 300 other lawyers I'm looking at, and I'm seeing all the amazing things they're doing, and that's just not realistic, So never mind adolescent users. I don't think adults are going to do too well either with a lot of Facebook use. So my thoughts on that are if you're going to use social media, have a goal in mind other than just this is a place where I'm going to waste some time. You need to have goals, and to the extent that those aren't being met, don't use it, or don't be adding people that don't meet those goals.
Yeah, I love that. And I love, when you were talking about fitting in, because I remember, when I joined, my first firm, and, just the need to fit in and to find your place. I mean, it is very much like, I don't know, joining a new school for the first time, or, what have you. But it's definitely true that you want to fit in with your firm within whatever department you're going to be in, if it's a litigation department or what have you. So so true. And then adding social on top of that is can be harmful as well. So I completely second your comments. So yeah, let's talk about the next social media platform, which is Instagram. It actually was found to be the worst social media platform for mental health. And Dr. Chatterjee says, can we measure up to curated images that are filtered and Photoshop, and it's fear of missing out of things. But, we talked about fear of missing out, but, let's talk about the curated images in terms of, what people, look like in real life, as opposed to, images that are filtered, as opposed to, images that, make you look quite different from the norm and make you look better. And it can, certainly make you feel, bad about yourself. If you see people, who the beautiful people, and then you actually see them in the daylight without their makeup and without their filter. It's a different look for sure.
Yeah. My favorite, Instagram thing that I follow is one where they take actual images with the Photoshop image, and they show it to you side by side. Every day I get a dose of reality with that.
I love that.
But yeah, I actually I don't use Instagram because of reasons like that. I don't need to see people living it up. It doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah. No, I love it. I'm so glad that you're on today, because I think we all need sort of that dose of, if it's not good for you, why are you looking at it, right?
Yeah, sorry, Dave. I one of the things that changed the direction of my life is this book called Millionaire Next Door by Stanley and Danko. And it's why I got into the, personal finance stuff. But what it says is lawyers are terrible at saving their income. And in fact, they're among the worst savers relative to income. So you take everyone at the same income level. Your lawyer and doctor are going to save the worst. And meanwhile, you've got your teacher and your so on, who are much better savers. And I think that made me think about where we are as a profession. And I thought that is totally what me and all my young lawyer friends want to do. We want to eat in nice restaurants and go to nice vacations and talk about all the cool things we're doing. Did you play at this golf club, and so on and so forth. And that I think that's harmful. And once you get over that fear of missing out in one frame of life, then you start getting over a fear of missing out in all the other things. And so that's something that's helped me.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, I think part of it, and I see this in my own life, is that when you're at a firm and you're sort of you have an expectation, to bring in business, and so you float about trying to find how many things you can do to bring in business. So maybe you're on social media, and then you're gonna be involved in bar association activities, and if it's a national bar, you're gonna have to do some traveling with that. Maybe you'll be involved in the Chamber of Commerce, and you'll be sponsoring things, and you'll have to get involved in the golf club. And so I think there's an expectation for connections, and to show people that you're more successful maybe than you are, and then add on to that some of the other things that we were talking about, just the need to keep up with people and to travel and that sort of thing. And yeah, that makes it very hard.
Yeah,
especially for lawyers.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Chatterjee continues on talking about sort of the addiction to uncertainty. And Ian, you talked about this a little bit. Just thinking about when you post, what will the reaction be to to the post. How many likes am I going to get? How many, what sort of comments am I going to get? Just kind of like the curiosity and like you said, sort of like the slot machine, right? And it is random a little bit, right? Whether or
Yeah.
not, one post is going to go, viral, one post is going to get a lot of likes. And that keeps us sort of playing the game, if you will, of social media.
Yeah, exactly. Your viral post, that's when your slot machine hits.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, everyone who's in social media has experienced that feeling where you post something and you think, oh, people are gonna like this, and then you check it in an hour, and you check it in 2 hours, and then you keep hoping that someone's gonna click on it, right?
Mm.
So you can't help but be addicted to it, and you got to remember that this was designed to work that way.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
totally. So, I mean, I think at the end of the day, and we're going to get into ways to combat the technology overload, but I don't want to sort of give a flavor that we're completely against social media, because obviously we both use it.
Users.
Yeah, and we're from my point of view, I think it is a good way to stay connected to people, and as we've been quarantined, I think I feel lucky, being in quarantine, because, I have my family, I have my dog, here at the house, and actually, working from home has been great, because, I'm seeing them way more than I would be if I had to, commute to the office and then, work and then, come on home on the train and the car. So I feel very, very good about that. But then I think about people who, were by themselves in quarantine, people who live on their own. And, obviously you can pick up the phone and call people. But social media, I think, hopefully gave people a way to stay connected, even though, even though there are some, obviously, bad things that can result of it. But there is a good way, a connecting way, that social media does for us as well.
Yeah, I've really greatly enjoyed, for example, here in Ontario, we have our own version of Law Twitter. It's a bunch of lawyers on Twitter that are following each other. And I've just really enjoyed, seeing that other lawyers are struggling the way I am, are having some issues, are making fun of themselves. That's the good part of social media, when you're like, yeah, it's not just me social isolating here. It's everyone else too. And what I'm going through, they're going through.
Absolutely. All right, so let's run through some of these ideas, and for those of you watching online, would love to hear if you've number one, if you've done any of these, and if any of these are of interest to you. So the first one is, I think, one that would be very difficult for lawyers, and that's to take a digital holiday. So if you have to have your phone with you, so if you're going out for, if you're going hiking or whatever, and you feel like you have to have, something so you can make an emergency phone call or the like, generally think about disabling your mobile data services. So, maybe you can still make a phone call, but, then you're not apt to go on and look at social media and the like. And so that was an interesting thing to me. But, in terms of, being a lawyer and taking a digital holiday, it's tough because, or maybe in my mind it's tough because, what if that key email from, a client comes in, or an emergency comes in, or, oh my gosh, what am I missing if I don't, look at my email constantly? I'm sure that you've, had those thoughts run through your head as well, Ian.
Yes, it's a terrible plight. And it's hard to do. So listen, when we come home, the rule in our house is we put our phones to charge on the doorway, and we don't touch it again. And I don't always stick to that rule, but that's the rule. But 100%, never sleep next to your phone. I do that when I travel, you're in a hotel, you put that phone there. And what do I do when I'm traveling? I'm just sitting in bed on the phone the whole time right before I go to sleep. And you don't want to do that. So that is a rule I'm really glad I stick to at home. And I know it's hard.
Yeah,
So
and actually, our guest last week had the exact same comment in terms of, you sleep better when you don't have that phone next to you, and when you don't, read an email or look at that light just before you try to go to bed. That actually really hurts your sleep.
yeah, if you do a little experiment with yourself, if you are the kind of person that's going to bed with your phone next to you every night, spend a week with a book, and you're going to realize how well you sleep and how quickly you go to sleep. Because books, at the end of the day, are going to put you to sleep. But just that's just one example. It's even hard for me when I go out for lunches with fellow lawyers. A lot of lawyers are good about taking that phone and putting it away. I put it right there on the table. I have a hard time putting it away. So I'm with all of you guys watching. I'm with you. So I'm not going to preach things I can't practice. It's hard.
Oh yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
So all right, so let's go on to the next one, which is using sort of a
Dave, about the last thing.
yeah.
I do turn on all notifications. Because I'm such a deep believer in working without interruption, and you get into a flow, I have all my notifications off on my phone and Windows, my practice management software. Nothing notifies me about anything. When I get a new email, no. It's always my choice to check the email, my choice to check my messages, and so on. So we turn off notifications.
Yeah, I love that. I have to admit, I'm the exact opposite way. Now, emails I can't do because I'm on so many newsletter lists, and I get a lot of nonsense in my emails. So if I turn my emails on, that would be hard. What I do have notifications on, and maybe after tonight I won't, is news notifications, because I don't. I'm not somebody who I don't watch the news on a regular basis. I don't read the newspaper a lot. And again, maybe this isn't the best thing to do. I'm sure it's not, but I get my news from Twitter notifications a lot of the times. So if because all of the news organizations pretty much have Twitter accounts, and so I subscribe to several of them on Twitter, and the ones that that I trust, those are the ones that have notify me of what's going on in the news. So I know it's probably the worst possible way to get news is from social media, but that's the way it works out for me. So
yeah, well, I do enjoy getting my news from Twitter too, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement. Sometimes you get way more updated and quick info from Twitter.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting you brought that up because, and you may actually get a better news source from non-news outlets. And what I mean by that is, so we live in a community here right outside of Chicago that I don't know if you've I'm sure you've been paying attention to sort of like the riots and things that have been happening. And in Chicago, there were quite a few riots downtown for a while, and then in our town there were protests and riots and that sort of thing. And so and this was something that occurred not that far, like 10 minutes from where we live. And so we actually found a guy who was going live. He was part of the protest and not making trouble or anything, but he, so many people in my community were watching that feed just to, find out, what was happening. And then, on the other side, on sort of the, Black Lives Matter movement sources, you're right, because you don't really, for me, I found a lot about sort of like the impact that racial injustice was having on folks through social media. I've learned a lot from people over the past few weeks about those issues through social media. So actually, finding credible sources, finding people with perspectives different than mine. It's really one of the great things that I found about social media is if I want to understand something better, I want to hear a different voice, social media is somewhere that I can go to get that.
I agree. It's awesome, actually. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So question about, when you use your phone, maybe asking yourself, do you really need to carry your phone with you? Do you really need to post this? Why am I doing this? And I'm very guilty of taking my phone wherever I go. And it's a terrible thing because, again, it's like, well, what if my partner calls me? What if my, client calls?
Yeah.
So I end up, just in the house, I carry it around with me, which is a terrible habit, but it's something that, I need to stop and think about, wow, do I really need to have this with me at all times?
It's a hard conversation to have with yourself and a hard decision to make, to unattach yourself from that thing. I'm on vacation right now at our cabin, and I spent the day phone up here and reading by the lake, and I have to say there were some pangs. I wanted to check, but it was also a great day because I didn't check. So
yeah.
Yeah.
So we got another comment that says, I also think bosses, partners, supervisors, and parents need to be aware that employees cannot and should not be accessible at all times, and there should not be an expectation that employees respond immediately during work hours. So how would you respond to that, Ian?
Well, I think law firms need to think about what policies they want to implement, right? Like for example, I don't think there's an obligation to respond to anything after hours. There just isn't, and I certainly don't want to be getting emails from opposing counsel after hours. I would hate getting emails from opposing counsel on Fridays. I'm like, what are you doing? Because you're sending me a message on Friday, and I'm going to think about that on Saturday and Sunday. I wish you hadn't. And I try not to do that myself because that's what we do, right? We like the good doctor says, whatever it is we do during the day, that's our input. And I'm kind of the view that our brain works on automatic, and so you got to feed that brain good stuff. And if you're feeding it work, that's a terrible weekend you've got. So yeah, I like the idea of putting a stop to that kind of thing. At our firm, there's no expectation you respond after hours.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I've been at very large firms, and now I'm at a mid-sized firm, and it's interesting just to see the difference between the two.
Yeah, exactly. Those that care about your work-life balance, think about that small firm, even if it doesn't pay better.
No, I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, that's what I've seen. I mean, certainly, when I look back at my when I was at a large firm, I received excellent training, so many good things that came out of that. But the one thing that I thought, really is the real difference between what I'm doing now and when I was at the big firm is sort of, the flexibility and the expectation game. And it really depends on, who you're working for and what they think. And so, yeah, I mean, I agree with the commenter. It's really up to, and the nice thing, Ian, is that, people like me and you and, our younger listeners and watchers, we can really affect that change, as we get older and maybe, get into, the ranks of, starting to help run some of these firms. It's incumbent upon us to implement some of these policies.
Yes.
So, all right. And then the next part, and you talked about this a lot, so we don't need to delve into it quite a bit, is to control your tech boundaries, which, turning off those notifications, those group texts, chats and messages. And the only thing that I would say on it is I've been added to a lot of weird group texts and a lot of weird group Facebook messages that for a while, it's kind of funny just to watch, but then it gets pretty annoying, and I find myself just taking myself out of those groups and or just muting the groups because
Yeah.
you don't need to get all of those messages. All right. So another thing that you can do, Dr. Chatterjee says, for combating technology overload is to do things that teach you to delay gratification. Because one of the things with social media, what we've seen and what we've talked about is you're constantly checking to see how your post did. And you want to teach yourself to delay that gratification. So learning a lot of different things, such as learning to play a musical instrument, learning a new language, playing chess, learning a new sport, playing games. He even says playing computer games might help with that as well. But it's fascinating to think about, playing a musical instrument. Like I'm learning to play piano, although I will say I'm learning to play piano via app, but instead of traditional music lessons. But yeah, certainly that helps you to delay gratification because it's something that you're learning and something that you can't expect to learn a musical instrument overnight, right?
Yeah, I think I think he's my interpretation of what's going on here is on the one hand, there's tons of good literature that delaying gratification is just a good way to live. You know, so the old Marshmallow Test for your 3-year-old, right? If you say to your 3-year-old, you have one marshmallow now or two if you wait an hour, right? And apparently the kids do have better outcomes if they're able to wait that hour. So I don't know if these tasks that he's put to help you have better delayed gratification skills. As someone that plays chess, I can tell you can play blitz chess, and I don't know if I'm delaying any gratification there. I'm playing that for the fun in the present time, and similarly, you're learning new things. I think that's cool. I don't know if it delays gratification. What I would say is doing these things gives you another aspect of life to live for, another input in the things that are going into your brain, right? You can spend the 8 hours of your day doing work and the next 4 hours thinking about work. Or you can take 8 hours of your day doing work, and then you can be, spending an hour on your musical instrument, an hour on chess, an hour trying new things, and then the whole weekend trying those new things or doing whatever, right? For me, it might be, learning how to wire my switches in the house, right? Or building a tree house. So all of those things I think are nice things that you can do in life, right? Other things to fill your life with. So that's how I see that. And those are things that I've recently done, by the way. So, and I found them extremely fulfilling. So I think it's just about, look, I am more than my work. I can do tons of things and enjoy tons of things. I don't define myself by my job. And I don't want my brain to define itself and to think constantly about the job, because it's so easy to let our practice dominate us.
For sure. And, one of the things that that I try to teach people is, we all talk about, time management. And I think oftentimes for lawyers, that means, how do you divvy up your work schedule? But actually, what I try to do is to put into, my life things that I love, things that I'm passionate about. Admittedly, some of them, are tangentially related to the law, like, this video program. I'm interested in, how to stay well in a legal environment. So yeah, I mean, this has partly to do with my job, but partly because I'm, fairly interested in the subject as well. So trying to include some things that you love in your day can help tremendously.
Yeah, it's a fun aside, right, Dave? It's just, I think about my Facebook Lawyers Forum, and I just love thinking about what am I going to write about today, or what interesting thing can I think about. And I bet you go through your day sometimes when you're sick of work and you're just driving home and you have something fun to think about. What kind of book do I want to read next or talk about, right? Those
Absolutely.
are those are fun things to think about, to have in your brain.
Absolutely. And then, a few other things that Dr. Chatterjee talks about is muting your digital world. So, he talks a lot about the lunch hour as well. We talked about that, trying to put your phone down, which is a very tough thing to do. You're right, because, it's funny, during quarantine, it seems like because I'm home and I'm not really going out for lunch or anything like that, I tend to actually, and it's not a good thing, but I tend just to kind of like skip over and I'm eating while I'm working, and that's not really a great thing. And to be able to take that lunch hour and to put work aside, to put your phone down, and to actually focus on a conversation with somebody is something that I really need to get back to.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about that until this. Same thing. Like I go downstairs, I prepare lunch, I bring my lunch up to the computer, and I keep going. I start surfing the net, even though it's my lunch hour. Um, you gotta. It takes effort to walk outside and to break everything off. In the old days, pre-COVID, I found it was easy because I would go for lunch with colleagues or go for lunch with lawyers in town. And that is, by the way, how that's my networking secret. By the way, that's what I do. I take people out for lunch, and so that's been something I've done nothing of since COVID. So it's yeah,
And the Zoom is not the same.
no, the
I mean,
same.
it's a decent,
It's
you
nice,
know,
but it's not the same.
yeah, no, it really isn't. So this last one I found impossible for me, at least with my work email account. With my personal email account, yeah, maybe, but declaring email bankruptcy. So a
That's not for
critical,
lawyers.
once you've reached a critical mass of unreplied emails, just trash them all and start again.
That's not for lawyers.
No, I
I
think,
don't delete emails.
yeah. You know what? You're right, though. I mean, how many people actually delete emails? I have, like a million folders that I just, if I get it, I just throw it into the folder, even though it may be completely meaningless. It could be, my law partner saying, "Okay, we're gonna have a phone call at this time." I still folder it. I mean, you're right. I mean, how often do we delete emails?
Yeah, and I'm sure in my general mailbox, I can go there right now and find the very first email I received.
Yeah, you're right. Probably not a good thing for lawyers. And then we'll just breeze through some of these. Scheduling, 1 to 2 hours to look at emails, scheduling time to look at social media. I think, with emails, one of the things that he talks about is something that Tim Ferriss recommends, which is, have a set time that you look at emails. And I can actually see how this could be good. Set a time that you're looking at emails, and then add an auto responder for the times that you're not going to look at your emails. Because I think again, taking away the distraction of social media, taking away the distraction of emails, and just saying, hey, I'm not going to be looking at emails during this time. If you really need to reach me, pick up the phone and call me if it's an emergency. Otherwise, I'll be looking at it, sometime down the line. So it's kind of a fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah, it's a tough one to manage your emails. I have had days where I'm like, well, first of all, a lawyer, I don't think, can set aside half an hour to look at emails, because that means you're looking at your emails and you're filtering all of them out into a schedule, right? You're saying, I don't have to do this now. I'm going to do this then here. I'm going to do this there. I'm going to do this there. But I think some of the time you're looking at those, probably every time you look at your whole set of emails, there's going to be a couple of things there that you need to do now, right? So I don't think you're going to be setting aside, half an hour. You might set aside 2 hours to look at your emails because there are going to be some things that you're going to have to do, right? So so I've had good days when I look at my emails and before I sit down, I was like, okay, I'm going to answer all these emails and I'm just going to finish every task that replying to those emails requires, right? And lo and behold, that was the whole day.
Yeah, it's amazing how emails can just drag you into a hole that you won't come up to, for hours.
Yeah,
for sure.
Where you go, I've got my 3 things. I absolutely have to draft this, and this morning, so I'm going to look at my emails in the afternoon. But it's tough. I don't know how you can schedule set times. For me, I come in, I read the emails, and I think to myself, okay, none of this has to be done now. I'm just going to do what I have to do. I'll come back to it at 12 o'clock type thing,
Yeah.
It would require big time discipline to do this. I don't know how people do it.
I don't know. Well, Tim Ferriss, I guess, only works 4 hours a week. So.
Tim Ferriss writes books and speaks. I don't know what else he does.
Yeah.
Podcasts.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
All right. So what else? He talks about, Dr. Chatterjee talks about muting groups and texts. We talked about that, turning off notifications, opening a dedicated email account for family and friends only. I don't know how that would work. For lawyers, it certainly, I don't think would help us get away from, our constant need to look at emails. Putting your phone out of sight in social situations, taking notes, keeping diary on paper to get you away from your phone. That's interesting. Switching your phone to Grayscale. This is something that I haven't tried because it makes it less interesting to look at.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I've done actually, and it was more to save room on my phone, which it was to take off where the pictures would automatically download on emails. That seems to have helped a little bit too.
Yeah.
And then other things he suggests is taking news apps off your phone, tracking your usage through something like a Moment app, so you can see how much you've been on social media. That would be quite interesting. Doing a challenge with your friend to limit social media, and then maybe buy an old-fashioned CD player or a record player to get you away from your phone as well. So I think all interesting ideas. And what I do, Ian, is I challenge my audience to maybe just pick one of the things that we talked about today and try to implement it for this upcoming week, because the nice thing about this book is that it sort of gives you the science behind it, and then it gives you lots of different options. But then it's up to us to take one of these things and to actually implement it in our lives. So I wonder, Ian, as we kind of getting to the end of our discussion today, was there any sort of last thoughts that you might want to share with our viewers today?
I guess I'll just say it's just about what I said sort of midway through, at least for me. It's about understanding that there's more to all of this than lawyering, and it's important to have other things that are occupying your mental energy, because if you don't have anything else occupying your mental energy, it will go back to the practice. So that to me is the key for why you want learn to play piano, take up this or that fun activity, go for a walk, play golf. It's so that you have other things that occupy your mind. I think about we all know some probably our parents or grandparents or parents-in-law who aren't working, and the smallest thing can set them off. And I often think it's because this smallest thing that they're dealing with is the only thing that they're dealing with. But if you add another 10 fun, interesting things, that puts things in perspective. And so it's good to have all these other interesting, fun things so you maintain perspective in your practice.
That's an awesome last thought. Thank you so much for joining me today. I know that we've gotten a lot of great commenters, and so I know that you've really your message really resonated with people. I wonder, and maybe this is not a great question to ask you, because I know you're trying to cut people out of social, but if somebody wanted to find you on social media, or perhaps get in contact with you, with your financial group online, what would be the best way that people could reach out to you and follow your work?
Yeah, you can add me on LinkedIn. Just look for me, Ian Hu, or on Twitter, Ian_HU_. Unfortunately, the Facebook site is only for Canadian lawyers, but if you want to join, just look for it, Canadian Lawyers Personal Finance Forum. Easiest way is you can just send me an email to ihu@chcbarristers.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And just to give my viewers kind of what we're going to be doing next week. Next week, we're going to be bathing ourselves in nature. So using nature to de-stress us. Our guest host next week is going to be Laura O'Sullivan. She's an attorney, nature enthusiast, and founder of The Woman's Coach. Actually, she was my very first boss. I did a fellowship with a public interest law program during my third year summer, and she was the very first person that I dealt with as an almost lawyer. So it'll be great to reconnect with her. She's had a lot of amazing travels, and she's going to talk to us about how we can use nature, and getting out into nature can help us with our stress. And actually, because she's actually going to be traveling next Wednesday, we're going to move the date to Tuesday. So our special date is going to be Tuesday, July 7th at 7 p.m. Central on all of the channels that you're currently watching me, but especially on our Facebook fan page at facebook.com/lawyerseq. So as we depart, just remember that emotional intelligence skills are necessary for all lawyers, and we can learn these skills together. So thanks again, Ian, and thank you everyone for watching and commenting, and we'll see you next week, next Tuesday, for the Lawyers Emotional Intelligence Book Club. Take care.
Thanks, Dave.